Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about 10 things you'll love about FME. It's more of an intro type of presentation. I've been using FME for since 2004 when I was in a GIS degree program here in Vancouver. And so one of the things I found looking through old stuff was that there wasn't really a lot. You got to hear a ton of crazy stuff this week about FME. Really interesting projects. I thought, well, there's not really much there for the intro user. So I thought, well, what sort of things that somebody told me when I started would be useful like now? So this is geared to you if you're the intro user. Or if you have people who are just starting out with FME, please feel free to share this presentation with them. So I am the GIS specialist. I'm the GIS guy at YVR. If you came through our airport, I hope you enjoyed it. We try and do a lot of innovative things. If you flashed your passport through those little passport kiosks, we do that. So we have a really good environment for innovative work. And luckily enough, GIS is a bit of a new thing at the airport. It's a bit of a new thing for a lot of airports. A lot of times airports are just basically CAD engineering shops. And so GIS and BIM are sort of like new data information silos that we're trying to piece together. For us, we do a lot of interior floor plans. We're going through a huge master plan process, so we're trying to aggregate data from all these different silos in our own agencies and share that data out in a whole bunch of different formats. So if you're starting out with FME, for me, if you ever watched He-Man as a kid like I did, this is FME for me. People are like, I got a spreadsheet. I don't know what to do with it. I'm like, hold on, give me a minute. I'll run it through FME. It gives me the power to do a lot of stuff. So if you're starting it from scratch, what kind of things could you use like right out of the box that would be a lot of fun and really useful? So straight out, master that navigation pane right out of the front thing. Bringing your readers, bringing your writers, check it all out, play around with it. There's tons of options in there. Really get used to it. You get to know your data, and pairing it up with the data inspector can save you a whole bunch of stuff. Because really, what's GIS is it's 90% of data cleanup for me. That's what it is, and maybe 2% of really nice graphics and stuff. The other thing too is it's not so bad at the airport because we have a relatively small area. But I mean, if you're dealing with like really intense data formats like an LAS file, or if you're dealing with an entire province of data or that sort of thing, or like big data, bounding boxes will rock. I mean, this is kind of like the tester of the tester of spatial. You get in there and get a really nice sample data because you'll probably be running and testing continuously, trying to get to that that really fine output that you really want at the end. And if you really want to power up, down in the user parameters, you can even set your min-max value. So you can set that continuously, have it set at once, and then use it in data formats that may have the same coordinate system. And that was really handy for me. So, and this goes without saying, SQL is fantastic. But trying, SQL can be really helpful in learning. You can go beyond your where statements and really fine grade your data inputs. And it'll just help in other things like SQL, the SQL transformers and stuff like that. So beyond my favorite one is the attribute manager. So, as in my day-to-day, I get a lot of I look back at my old workspaces and I'm just like, I have an attribute creator, I have what's it, attribute creator, attribute keeper. It's a whole collection of them. And Mark Ireland has written a great post about if you look on the blog, it talks about when this came out, maybe a few years ago. And I look back at my old workspaces and I kind of shudder a little bit. But Attribute Manager has got so many, so many different options in there. Like you can go in there and do conditional statements. I wish I had it up here, but conditional statements, you can test, you can do a test filter in some ways as well. It's all in there. And then with all the other, like the string functions, the FME functions, special systems, you can do math, you can do whatever you want. So there's lots of great things in there. In my notes, there'll be a link to Mark's blog post about it from 2015. So encourage you to have a look at that. Again, like SQL, we all love regex, right? Love it like a bullet to your, like a gun to your head. So string values can be a real pain sometimes, and for me, when I got into GIS, my program I like to say it gave me a shotgun of all these different technologies, and they just blast them out: SQL, regex, programming, Java, all that. But even in FME, I mean, there's things that you can tease out. And quick example, at YVR, all our CAD formats, all our CAD plans, floor layouts we have a standardized way of labeling every room in our terminals. So with regex, we can tease out that formula. So in this case, if you're out in the domestic wing of the terminal, or you're in the B wing, B3 means you're on the B wing and the third level, and then these are the subsequent rooms. And so, as you can see, like, we can match the text with regex. So, regular expressions if you're watching the video. LiDAR. Every now and then, you're gonna play around with LiDAR, and LiDAR is its own Pandora's box of issues. Lots of fun. You can get some great stuff. Again, the online help, read the online help. It's a fantastic resource. And what I discovered, you constantly learning new things. In a lot of places, everybody will have, if you're in a big organization like mine, everyone's got a standard workstation. If you're special, if you're a GIS special, or you're a graphics person, your workstation's going to have a lot more firepower in the box. So what my co-op student discovered was that she was processing LiDAR, but it was really, really, really slow because she just didn't have the processing power in her box to do it. Talk to SAFE. I said, you know what, if you're having issues, talk to SAFE. They can help you out with CUM solutions, and this was one of them. You can change your processing environment variable to put it on a different machine. So that helps, or the alternative as well is if you've got FME server, test out a small area, run through your workspace, and then blow out your bounding box and send it up to server, and it'll process it on its own. So if your computer is a Toyota and not a Tesla, then try this. I work with ArcMap a lot, ArcGIS, whatever it's called these days. So ArcGIS for desktop. So if you ever have to aggregate areas a lot, like I do for floor plans, the one thing I discovered that ArcGIS's dissolve tool just for some reason comes out with some really nice output. It doesn't have a lot of slivers, there's not a lot of gaps, it can aggregate things, and FME treats it slightly differently. But I'm gonna say it's a little bit better once you get the hang of it. So for me, so we do a lot of, you can throw in dissolver and aggregator, handle your spikes and your slivers, because if you work with CAD a lot, sometimes when you build CAD files year after year after year, people aren't looking at topology. And topology, when you're doing dissolving and aggregating, will drive you bonkers. It drives me bonkers anyway. So played around with the sliver and the spike remover. How are we doing for time?
We're good. Yeah, you've got let's say 10 minutes.
Okay.
Some questions. Yeah.
Log files. Hey, there's stuff that's happening in the background. Learn how to read your log file. It's amazing what sort of things you find out, and then when you understand what's happening, you get to be like Thor and go, yes, okay. Some of the time I've seen surprises where like I go to write stuff out to SDE and I think it's written out, and I'm not paying attention to the log file, and there's like little red error messages or little blue messages that tells you what features didn't get written. And at first you're kind of like, okay, I just need to get through this job. Just get through it, just write it. And then later on you're looking at your output 2 days later and people are like, well, what's that on the map that doesn't look right? I was like, oh yeah, I missed a donut. So have a look at that. There's plenty of stuff in there. It's just good practice to have a look at that. Raster creation. That surface model or transformer is awesome. So when you're playing around with LiDAR and you want to just check out what it can do, this one will give you lots of options. And you can go and look through and you can play around with different transformers that kind of does everything in the surface modeler, but that's like a one-stop shop for stuff. And I also recommend the point cloud thinner. Sometimes tiles of LiDAR can just drag on and on. Finally, kids, pay attention, learn a little Python. This is going to be the Swiss Army. If FME is the Swiss Army knife of software, Python these days is the Swiss Army knife of programming languages. I mean, it's, back in 2004 and 5, I think I had one class in Python, and now it's the amount of usage that Python is getting these days is amazing. One of my other co-op students actually, there on the screenshot is one of the things that he used FME. In FME, he used a Python to actually do a little bit of regular expression use, but he liked Python, so he used the Python caller and got it in there. Also, the start down in the navigation panel, there's also the startup and the shutdown Python scripts. So to be honest, I wish I knew a little bit more Python. I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be really super useful, but enough to get me by. So I always found that maybe one of these days I'll try and use a shutdown Python script to copy and manage files after I've written them on a server and move them over to a backup somewhere. So that is my top 10 things, much like Dave Letterman's top 10 list. I encourage you to go, now that you know, go and be this guy and handle your data like a champ. Yeah, he's having fun. He's dealing with every situation. And I think those top 10 will basically give you a lot of flexibility and straight out of the box, whatever kind of data stuff you're handling will be really good. And these are just 10 things that I just love using on a day-to-day basis. So thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free, or let me know what your favorite one is, and we can chat about it.
Carlos, question. You compared the dissolver, right, between ArcGIS and FME.
Yeah.
Are there other things that you found much better, faster, or something easier in FME than in the geoprocessing toolbox?
Yeah, it's a good question. To be honest, I find that I have so many different data needs from different formats and things that really instead of firing up geoprocessing tools in ArcGIS, I use FME, and that's what I'm comfortable with. Maybe for other people who don't have access to it, and maybe they got to use the geoprocessing tools. I mean, there's all, there's so many different ways you can approach a problem, and both. It's just a matter of what tools you're a master with. So, yeah. Just a show of hands. Was any one of those out there was one of your favorites? Anybody? Like, how many people use the attribute manager? Come on, there we go. LiDAR? Who's using LiDAR on a day-to-day? Yeah. So LiDAR guys, anybody want to tell me what their favorite one is? Because combiner? Putting those tiles together?
Yeah, the combiner and the calculator sometimes, if it's really weird stuff.
Cool.
You just go down in and you calculate yourself.
Right.
And you need to just re-project it. I mean, it's pretty awesome.
Yep, for sure.
Anything will handle it. I mean, handle it all and just type it all through is way easier.
Yeah, for sure.
I see you're working with the surface modeler in one of your previous slides of LiDAR.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what the processing is, what's the end
Sure.
result there?
So with our LiDAR tiles, as you can imagine, so Sea Island is basically we've got dikes all around our island. So we're basically a pool, and we've got to pump out water like crazy. We got to keep those runways dry and keep the birds away from ponding water. So every couple years we get LiDAR data for the island, and we try and our CAD is actually in special YVR coordinates. It's like somebody took the UTM coordinate system and chopped off the last 3 digits on the XY coordinates. And that's just been how it's been forever. But when we get LiDAR, we have it in UTM coordinates. We try and merge it together. I try to generate some contours. We use a DEM. Sometimes we just want to know where the ponding water is, so I'll use a bounding box for specific our LiDAR tiles. And we'll generate a DEM just for visualization, contours for the CAD folks, and then process the bare earth and non-bare earth LiDAR sets at the same time, just so that we can see the heights of things. Interesting, quirky thing about airports is that we like to see stuff when stuff is built at the end of the year. So unlike municipalities, we get our aerials and our LiDAR flown in September after everything is grown and after everything is built. Whereas in my previous job at the municipalities, we do it before that. And also I like to snip the aerials as well for a particular area if we need to. So it goes out, I use a surface modeler just for various functions and then spit out the outputs in different ways. Yeah.
Do you do any stitching of images, or joining, combining more and more images?
Yeah. So we'll, it kind of depends on our source. I mean, our aerials are pretty stitched together when we get them. We don't have a very large area to begin with, but we do have tiles sometimes just for easier data management. I have discovered in my job that we have like tons of aerial photos that the Air Force flew in the 50s, because we used to have a base on Sea Island, and so it's sort of a pet project to try and scan those little aerial tiles, black and white aerial tiles, and stitch them together. But then I gotta basically georeference them as well and put them together and then clean them up. So
Do you have an in-house tool to do the stitching?
I just use the tools out of FME.
Okay.
Yeah. So next.
How do you handle your Z's and your vertical datum and the tides? Do you ever run any issues like that?
I'm sure we will. We're a bit of a new shop when it comes to GIS, so I haven't had a real big case for dealing with the Z elevations, or for the elevations. So, but we will. I mean, I'm sure one of the things we're going through right now is figuring out our stormwater data. So it's a huge thing. When you're talking about maybe a kilometer of a pipe that's maybe got a slope about this much, we're going to have to do a lot of work and do a lot of processing to make sure that we get our elevations are tight. So.
So you're not tight. The exact heights of it at tarmac level and stuff. It's not. You don't need to be extremely precise on that, or maybe it's just handled somewhere else.
I think we will be. I think we'll have to be. I mean, LiDAR kind of gives us that flexibility to find those types of issues. Yeah, we haven't. BIM is kind of going to be a big thing for us, so I think that's going to play in a little bit as well, and doing 3D modeling, especially for airspace. So.
Have you done any LiDAR inside the terminals? Laser scan?
No, I know other places have, and if you're a agency that has indoor stuff to do, and you don't have a rich CAD data set to work with, that's an option. There's a great company called Locus Labs, and they're doing a lot of indoor mapping with that, and they basically. Actually, Radio had a great video where they took LiDAR and they scanned a video of them performing in a house, and it's basically they have a little machine that sets up and scans as they're performing. So Google it; it's amazing to watch. And that was a few years ago. But Locus Labs is doing something similar where they just basically go around with a little cart and a scanning mechanism and scan the facility. So. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yes.
You mentioned BIM earlier. Are you doing any presentations on?
I'm not doing any BIM. Actually, I'm here kind of to hear about other people's experience about BIM, because for the longest time we've had CAD and now GIS, and now they want to do BIM, and we're sort of going through the process of figuring out the standards and seeing what other people are doing. But again, sometimes it comes down to we don't really have, sometimes we don't have the capacity, like the personnel capacity, just to handle BIM and all of its nuances. So, I mean, I've seen some great presentations that people have done with BIM, but I think we have to meet our basic needs right now and just sort of figure out a way to, like, we've gotten BIM models from consultants on different projects, on new projects, but with the LiDAR and CAD, hopefully we've got enough to sort of create future BIM models for our buildings. And that will be a big, I could see that being a big thing for sure, especially for new builds. So, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Please come up to me anytime during the conference. I'm looking forward to your questions and hoping to hear about your experiences here as well. And if you have any gripes about the airport, or, well, you can talk to the security about that. Thank you.